It is 12:30 in the morning. So that's how you know it's an AEW pay-per-view review. It's 12:30 in the morning. And Revolution is in the books. Revolution on paper coming in looked like an excellent show. A lot of very strong matches on paper. A lot of matches I was looking forward to on this show tonight. And it was on its way, honestly, to being, I think, one of the better shows that they've done in a very long time. We had a lot of good things on this show tonight, whether it was the steel cage match, whether it was the International Championship match, whether it was the Hollywood ending match with Toni Storm and Mariah May, Swerve Strickland and Ricochet. There were a lot of things to like about Revolution. That main event was not one of them. Tony Khan got his Hell in a Cell 2019 moment tonight here at Revolution. It's like the player who's running down the field and he's blowing past everybody and he's going to score a touchdown. It's going to be this great touchdown. Nobody can stop this guy. And then he spikes the ball on the 1 yard line. And then he gets tackled to the ground. That was Revolution. This was his Seth Rollins and Fiend moment in the main event. A steaming pile of dog shit for a main event and a finish. And I can't even put all the blame, honestly, on Copeland and Moxley. They certainly get their share of the blame. I actually felt sorry for them to some degree coming into this main event tonight. Because look at everything that AEW gave you on this show before we even got to the main event. Jon Moxley did not make his way down to the ring for that match until 11:35 p.m. Eastern Time. And he took his sweet time, too, getting in the ring before the match could even begin. Look at everything that we got on this show up until that point. All the blood, all the guts, all the violence, all the high spots, all the big dramatic spots, everything that we had seen, even in the match that immediately preceded this. With Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, there was nothing that these two men could do when they went out there to top what we had already seen. We were already tapped out. There was nothing that could be done short of doing a main event finish that was creative or clever in some way, or tried to get the AEW World title off of Jon Moxley. And that, to me, that was the number one goal coming into this show tonight. Get that fucking title off of Jon Moxley and put the death knell in this Death Rider storyline. Because as soon as I saw the angle they did on Dynamite on Wednesday night, where Copeland wrestled Wheeler Yuta and had a competitive match with him, no less, and then shook his hand when the match was over, and we saw Wheeler Yuta storm out. Jon Moxley's yelling at him. He says, fuck you. And he storms out, right? The writing was on the wall. You have to be blind as a bat, okay, to not see how things were going to end up with Wheeler Yuta on this show. Yet another AEW pay-per-view main event where I have to look at Wheeler fucking Yuta getting involved in the match. And so what does he do? Oh, gee, I wonder. Of course, he hits Copeland, and he's back with Jon Moxley, although he never left. Now, at least it didn't lead directly into the finish of the fucking match. But that was something that you should have seen coming from a mile away. The bigger question was, how would the Christian Cage contract play into things? And I have floated this idea involving Jay White signing his name to the contract and cashing in, but it was an idea. Anything to get that championship off of Jon Moxley and onto somebody else, whether it was Christian, whether it was Jay White, whether it was Copeland and then Christian or Copeland and then Jay White, I didn't give a shit. This Death Rider stuff has been awful. It makes for terrible, boring television, uninspired, not interesting, not exciting. It actively drags the entire show down. And it's one thing to do that on the weekly television shows, but on your pay-per-views, which is what AEW is known for, that's their bread and butter. Whatever you want to say about AEW, when business is down and you don't think the shows are great, the one thing that you cannot say is that they don't pump out some of the best fucking pay-per-views that you will see all year long. That's been their forte from day one. You can always rely on that. And even on these shows, you're going to see a lot of opinion and comment about Revolution. Oh, it was such a great show until the end. It was such a great show until the main event. And isn't that the story of the Death Rider? I mean, it lies at the feet of Tony Khan, of course, because he booked this fucking show. But isn't that the story of the Death Riders? And we're not talking about a heel faction that's, boy, it's getting a ton of great heat, right? They're doing their job. They want you to hate the Death Riders. Oh, I hate the Death Riders, all right. I hate the Death Riders, all right. Not necessarily in the way I think that they intend. Actively drags the show down. You're going to hear a lot of people saying the same thing. This was a great show until we got to the main event. Jon Moxley, in case you couldn't tell, is still the AEW World Heavyweight Champion. Now, I knew this, of course, would be a possibility. I was hoping against hope that it wouldn't be, and they would begin to kind of pivot in a different direction as we now begin the march to All In Texas, which is still many months away. But get the title away from Moxley, start a new story with somebody else, and move in that direction. The only saving grace that I could even talk about here, at the very end of the show, we had Swerve Strickland attack Jon Moxley, and the fans were into it. Swerve Strickland is the #1 contender for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. Swerve Strickland is going to Dynasty on April 6th. He will challenge Jon Moxley for that title, and he better fucking win. It would be the second year in a row that Swerve Strickland wins the AEW World title at Dynasty. And if he wins the championship on that show, hallelujah. But that means we have another month of this Death Riders bullshit on television. And I could barely stomach it. I'm watching a main event on this show, by the way, with Adam Copeland and Jon Moxley. And the thought does occur to me, because it's not anything that I've commented on up until this point. But the thought did occur to me as I'm watching this, and the way they did it, where... Well, first of all, we got to back up here for a second, okay, and talk about exactly what happened here. Because Jay White on television on Wednesday said, well, I'm going to be there to back up Cope. I'm going to have his back at Revolution. Jon Moxley came into the show at a handicap. Most of the members of the Death Riders had already been taken out by Adam Copeland or Willow Nightingale. She actually took out Marina Shafir. So Moxley, in theory, was coming into this match all by himself, save for Yuta when he walked out. We got to see Jay White in this match. Jay White is much better as a heel, by the way, and I'm still hoping that he ends up as one. It didn't happen tonight. What we got was him inadvertently striking Copeland in the face with a briefcase. And then he wrestled off with Wheeler Yuta, never to be seen again. A complete waste of an appearance for Jay White. So that was the last we saw of him. We did get Christian Cage on this show. Christian Cage interfered in the main event and prevented Adam Copeland from winning the AEW World Championship, I guess because he couldn't stomach the idea of him winning the title before he could. And he cashes in his guaranteed title match that he's been walking around with this contract since fucking August. And he cashes in his world title contract during the main event, making it a triple threat match. Like this is WrestleMania 31. And he cashes it in, and he tries to beat Copeland, can't do it. Moxley flies in, and Jon Moxley effectively steals the win here. And he beats Christian and not Copeland. And what I was going to say is the thought occurs to me, we haven't seen Adam Copeland do very many jobs in AEW since he came into the company, now have we? One of the only ones that I could think of, honestly, is when Moxley choked him out at Grand Slam, which was to build to this match here on this show. That's about it. He never should have beaten Malachi Black last year at Double or Nothing. That's a whole other conversation. But boy, he every time we see Adam Copeland out there, all he does is win. Even in this match here, he couldn't take the loss. It was Christian. They had to have Christian cash in so that Christian could take the loss. Very interesting. Very interesting. So now we will see if we are ultimately going to get the reunion of Copeland and Christian. I mean, we are at some point, but are they going to go into that now? Where will Jay White factor into things? As the world turns, I guess we'll have to wait until television, and not that I'm terribly interested in any of this, but we'll have to wait until television to find out. So now our next championship match coming up is going to be a Dynasty. We have to wait a month, and with any hope, Swerve Strickland will walk out of Dynasty the AEW World Champion. And then you look ahead, and we could end up with Swerve defending the title in Texas at All In, maybe in the main event against Hangman, right? Or whoever it may be. He's the right man for the job. Honestly, anybody would be the right man for the job. The Maytag man would be the right man for the job right now. The Orkin man would be the right man for the job right now. I could walk out my front door. What time is it? 12:46 in the morning here. I could walk out my front door right now. I could go, 5 blocks down the street. First fucking guy that I see, maybe getting milk at the convenience store. Maybe he's got a bottle of beer in a brown paper bag, whatever it is. I'll grab him. he would be the man for the job. Anybody but what they're doing now, anybody but Moxley, anybody but the Death Rider stuff, we need to move on from this. AEW has a lot to offer. You saw it on the pay-per-view tonight. There was a lot of great action on this show. And a lot of stars on this show, a lot of people that you want to root for, a lot of great talent you want to get behind. I didn't see any of that in the main event. And that's your main event. That's a problem. That's why you need someone like Swerve or MJF or Hangman to be in that spot. And with any hope in a month, we'll be there. But we're not there now. So unfortunately, what you're left with here is what I thought overall was an excellent show until we got to the very end. If we could just chop off the main event and everything that we saw after the cage match, this would go down as one of the best shows that AEW has done in the last couple of years. And that's what I'm going to try to focus on here. But that main event was absolute dog shit. And I do feel a little sad, or a little bad, for Copeland and for Moxley in this regard. They were in a no-win situation going into that main event. A no-win situation. 20 minutes left in the show, 11:30 at night. We have seen everything that you could possibly want to see on this show. There was nothing that they themselves could have done that was going to top anything that came before that match. I think in everyone's mind, it was about Christian and waiting for him to cash in that contract and seeing how that would unfold. And that's probably all anybody was really thinking about. But another pay-per-view where the Death Riders reign supreme. Wake me from this nightmare when it's over. Unbelievable. I don't know what else to say about it. At least we have a clear direction for Dynasty. A lot of people are going to be pulling for Swerve. It's the best thing I could say about it. In the meantime, though, we have another month of this shit. But there was a lot of other great stuff on this show that we're going to be talking about here, and I'm going to try to get you through it as quickly as I can, because it is late. But we did have a very bloody, violent payoff, as it should be, between Toni Storm and Mariah May. Not the only match on this show that got blood. Shockingly enough, of all the blood and the bloodbaths that we saw on this show tonight, Jon Moxley did not bleed. Very interesting. We haven't seen him really bleed in a while. Maybe he's got no blood left to give. Maybe he's a vampire. He'll take blood. He won't give blood. This is your AEW Revolution 2025 review. I am the Solomonster. Do me a favor, if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. I'm not always this pissy. Subscribe to the channel, like this video. Super chats are open. You'll see them in a little bit here popping up on your screen. We have a goal going in the chat. We have a little segment we do at the end called Be the Booker. We'll do that at least once if we hit our likes goal tonight. So go ahead and get them on in. There were 4 matches that were scheduled. We have a 0-hour pre-show. I'm going to run through this here for you because there were 4 matches that were scheduled for the pre-show. And it ended up being 3 matches and an angle. And I'm not upset about it. And I'll tell you why here in a second. But we had Hologram and Komander teaming up to take on Blake Christian and Lee Johnson. Now, you're all very excited to hear about this match at 12:50 in the morning. But the people in the building were very excited to see Hologram and Komander. Right? This was the perfect opening match here. These guys are going out there. They're doing all kinds of crazy spots. The fans were into it. And Hologram picks up the win with a 450 splash to win it for the babyfaces. There was a scary spot during this match. It was actually out on the apron where he went for a poison rana on the apron. Hologram did to Blake Christian, and I mean, he hit the move, but not exactly. It wasn't exactly the neatest poison rana that you'll ever see, so that was a little scary. We had the TNT champion, Daniel Garcia, teaming up with the Undisputed Kingdom, Adam Cole, yes, on the pre-show, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong, taking on Shane Taylor Promotions, which was Shane Taylor, Lee Moriarty, Carly Bravo, and Sean Dean. There was a spot where Garcia got a back suplex on Shane Taylor. There were some quick hot tags with the Undisputed Kingdom. Adam Cole comes in. He wants a Panama Sunrise. Garcia makes a blind tag. And this does not sit well with Adam Cole. He's not happy about this. Garcia sinks in a Dragon Tamer. Eats some wings. Cole took out Taylor with a super kick. Kept his eyes locked on Garcia, though. He was still visibly upset that Garcia took all the glory here. He won it for his team, but a little bit of friction there. I thought the match itself, it was fine. They're furthering the tension between Garcia and Cole for their inevitable TNT title match at some point. Very likely on an episode of Collision at some point in the next few weeks. So then we had what was supposed to be a match. Chris Jericho was supposed to defend his Ring of Honor World Championship on this show against Bandito's younger brother, Gravity. Yes, Chris Jericho against Gravity. The jokes write themselves. So they show Gravity's mother and sister sitting in the front row. And so before the match even begins, Jericho blasts Gravity with a baseball bat shot. And the Learning Tree crew, they put a 3-on-1 beatdown on Gravity. Aubrey Edwards, she calls the match off. The match hasn't even begun yet. She's calling the match off as these men are beating down Gravity. So here comes Bandito. Okay, Gravity is carrying him down the aisle, and Bandito rushes into the ring to try to make the save for his brother. The numbers are too much. He suffers the same fate. Big Bill hits a big choke slam on Gravity. His mother and sister are shown in the crowd. They're crying, "Oh, my son, Gravity." He's getting his ass kicked in the ring. Yeah. Okay, whatever. So they're very upset at what they're seeing. Big Bill is holding Bandito, and he's forcing him to watch as Jericho is just slapping Gravity. And finally, he rips his mask off, which is the cardinal sin, right, when it comes to the luchadors. Rips the man's mask off. And the boos rain down. So the crowd was furious. Jericho beat him down with a baseball bat again, hit the Judas effect. Aubrey Edwards goes, and she gets the mother and the sister. And they come into the ring, and they are tending to, along with Bandito now, they're tending to Gravity on the mat. And so they're pleading. Bandito is looking up and pleading with Jericho, who's still threatening them to leave him alone. And Jericho flips off the crowd, and the heels end up leaving. This was a win-win situation. I'm going to tell you why. This was a win-win situation because we were spared the match, okay, which I don't think would have been any good. Jericho and Bandito, sure. Jericho and Gravity, not so much. So we were all spared a match that was not going to be very good in the first place, but it got a lot of heat. I will give him credit for it. Jericho knows how to get heat. And it was a great angle as far as building sympathy for Bandito, because the plan, I would assume, is to rematch them and have Bandito be the one to take the Ring of Honor World title from Jericho. If not, then it should be. So as far as that goes, as an angle to create heat and sympathy, I thought this was good. And we didn't have to get the match. Hence, a win-win situation. So that was the end of that. I like what they did here. Now, Renee and RJ City, before the next match, they were joined by the rapper Young Gravy. Today I learned that there is a rapper by the name of Young Gravy. And he said that he's siding with MJF tonight in his match with Hangman Page. And Renee was very impressed by him. She's very impressed by his size. Called him a tall drink of water. And Renee asked what Gravy has lined up. And he said, just chilling. Just chilling. A man of few words. So when they went back to commentary, Tony Schiavone reminded us that it wasn't just gravy. It was Young Gravy. And that popped Excalibur and Taz. WWE gets Travis Scott. AEW gets Young Gravy. At least he didn't injure anybody. And then the main event of the pre-show was the return of the Costco guys. Big Boom AJ. How about this? Okay, I want you to process this and think about this for a second. Big Boom AJ didn't even have the worst match of the night. Big Boom AJ had a better match than Jon Moxley and Adam Copeland. Chew on that for a while. Big Boom AJ, Orange Cassidy, and Mark Briscoe. They took on Johnny TV and the MXM collection, which is Mansoor and Mason Madden. This was the comedy match of the pre-show. Cassidy made his entrance, and guess who Orange Cassidy had with him when he made his way out? The Rizzler. I would have preferred the Rizzler come out and sign his name to that contract and pin Jon Moxley to win the AEW World title. I could have gotten behind that. Absolutely. I would have taken the Rizzler. I would have taken Big Boom AJ as the AEW World Champion. Can you imagine that the heads that would explode if that happened? The Rizzler is out there. He's dressed as Orange Cassidy. So they show Adam Devine. I don't know who these people are. I had to write their names down. Adam Devine and Toni Cavallero from the TV show The Righteous Gemstones. Okay, so they're at ringside. They were in Los Angeles for this show. So there were a bunch of stars and comedians and, D-list celebrities hanging around the first few rows. So the Rizzler takes a seat at ringside next to Big Justice, which is Big Boom AJ's young son. Mark Briscoe tagged in AJ. This was his first match since he broke his foot in his last match, which was against QT Marshall a few months ago. So he's firing off right hands and splashes, and Mansoor leaps off the ropes, and AJ catches him and gives him a belly-to-belly suplex, right? This guy's running wild. So AJ wanted his power boom. It's not a power bomb. It's a power boom. And he wants to go for it, but Taya Valkyrie gets up on the apron and she's distracting him. Just long enough for Johnny TV to attack from behind. So here comes Harley Cameron. They sucked her into this. Here comes Harley Cameron. She pulls Taya off the apron, slams her into the barricade. AJ in the ring, meanwhile, hits the power boom on Johnny. Mansoor is in, and he hits AJ with a thrust kick. Cassidy and Cameron, they took the referee to allow Big Justice to come in. So the referee's attention now is diverted. And here comes Big Justice. How old is Big Justice, by the way? I didn't write this kid's age down. What is he, 8? 11? I'm terrible with this. What is he? Maybe he's 10, 11, something like that. He climbs into the ring. Mansoor is in the corner. And he has mounted AJ. Like you would for punches in the corner. Big Justice slips underneath Mansoor. And he gives him a power boom off the ropes. And the fans pop huge for this. And Big Boom AJ now embraces his son. They do the camera pan out like they do for Okada. They did for Okada in New Japan. And so father and son embrace in the middle of the ring. And the son goes to leave. And as soon as AJ turns around, Mason Madden, big dude, takes his head off with an axe kick. And then the son has no idea about this. His back is still turned. He's still in the ring. Madden grabs a hold of the son like he's going to punch him. And now I'm excited. I'm like, all right, let's see where this goes. So he grabs the kid. And before he could do anything, Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, they make the save. Orange punch. And the baby faces finish Madden off with the Shield triple power boom. After the match, here come the Murder Machines. Lance Archer and Brian Cage. They come to the ring. They get up on the apron. But here comes Powerhouse Hobbs. He comes down. He lays out Mason Madden with a spine buster. Cassidy now brings, let me go to the list. Adam Devine. I want to make sure I get this right. Adam Devine and Toni Cavallero. He brings them into the ring, and they hit a double choke slam on Mansoor before putting shades on and posing with Orange Cassidy. And Taz had the line of the night here. Taz is sitting here because he plays like the grumpy old grandfather just so well. But I do wonder how much real emotion there was behind this. But he's sitting there and he just goes, he's very irritated. And he just asks, is everyone a wrestler now? Does nobody pay dues anymore? He's not wrong. I was wondering the same thing myself. So he's not wrong. But this was more entertaining than the train wreck that we got in the main event tonight. How sad is that? We got a better main event on the 0 hour than we did on this pay-per-view. But the actual pay-per-view kicked off with one of the matches I was most looking forward to. Nothing on the line, no titles on the line, no death match stipulation. We got enough of that tonight. This was just straight up one-on-one for the first time in 5 years. MJF one-on-one with Hangman Adam Page. Bryce Remsburg calls for the bell. And MJF and Page, immediately they charge out of the corners. They start firing off punches in the middle of the ring. So MJF, he power bombs Hangman onto his knee. And then he makes a big production out of running the ropes. Okay, he's running the ropes back and forth. He's going back and forth. And then he stops and he thrusts his crotch into Hangman's face. Hit him in the face with his dick. So MJF calls him a little bitch. Hangman roughs him up with some punches. MJF spits on him. So Page comes back with a fall-away slam. He sets up for a buckshot lariat. MJF avoids it, sets up for a pile driver. Hangman counters into a deadeye. And Page, he ends up escaping the heat seeker that MJF attempted. Hits him with a buckshot lariat. He had the pin. MJF puts his foot on the bottom rope at the final possible moment to break up the pin. So Hangman sets up for another buckshot. MJF leaves, exits to the floor. He gets MJF back in the ring. He goes for a buckshot. MJF counters into the salt of the earth armbar. So he gets the armbar locked on. Page finally gets to the bottom rope with his foot, gets the rope break. They end up at ringside. MJF grabs Tony Schiavone's headset off of his head. He puts it on. And he says that he is the fucking man in AEW. So Page catches MJF with a moonsault off the barricade, and he has MJF in a position for a tombstone pile driver, right? MJF reverses it. They fall backwards. Now he's got Hangman upside down in position for a tombstone. And there is a chair that is open a few feet in front of them, right up against the barricade. And MJF, he basically, with Hangman, okay, in his clutches, walks over to the chair and delivers a tombstone pile driver onto the open chair outside. Now, I can't remember seeing a tombstone spot like that before, where somebody was tombstoned on top of an open chair out on the floor. So I'll give them points for creativity there. Crowd popped huge for that spot. MJF gets back in the ring. The referee begins to count. Page is being tended to by the doctor, I think it was, or someone outside the ring. And it doesn't look like he's going to make it back in the ring in time, but of course, he does. Because what a shitty finish that would be. Barely makes it back into the ring at the last second. And MJF at this point is nearly in tears. He can't believe that this man kicked out. He doesn't know what to do next. And he starts to freak out. He starts yelling and looking towards the fans. And he starts yelling, "Why not me? Why not me?" So he sets up for the heat seeker. Page holds MJF on his shoulders while he climbed through the ropes and hits the deadeye. Page then hits the Christopher Daniels Angel's Wings, and it looked nasty as hell. I mean, he dropped MJF right down on his face. I mean, there was no daylight between his face and that mat. Page then skinned the cat from the inside of the ring, ended up on the apron, set up for the buckshot lariat. He springboarded into the ring, and he wiped out MJF with the buckshot. It connects flush, and he pins MJF clean in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3. This was a very good opener with some brutal-looking spots, and I thought it was a nice touch, the way that MJF was coming off so, desperate, yelling, "Why not me? Why not me?" to the fans, right? The mask began to slip, and you begin to see how insecure, I mean, we already knew this, but how insecure this man really is. And how all he's ever wanted was acceptance from the fans, right? They cheer all these other people. Why not me? So I like how they incorporated that into the match. I was surprised that MJF lost. I really didn't think they were going to give the win to Page here. I figured this is just the first in a series of matches. MJF wins first, and then they kind of go from there. I did see something. I think it was Sapp. I think it was Sean Ross Sapp, who mentioned that in the 3 years since he got squashed by Wardlow at Double or Nothing, okay, what was that? 2022, I think. MJF has lost to exactly 3 people in singles matches since he has come back to the company. Samoa Joe, Will Ospreay, and tonight, Hangman Page. That's it. So beating MJF, it does feel like it means something, because you may not be a fan of his creative over the past year, right? I mean, the stuff with Will Ospreay, I enjoyed that. That was great. And I'm glad now that he's locking horns with Hangman. All the other stuff they've had MJF doing, the Daniel Garcia stuff, the Adam Cole stuff, which jumped the shark fucking years ago, the stuff with Jeff Jarrett, which thank God they cut that off. A lot of it has just been a waste, an absolute waste of the man's talents and what he brings to the table. Despite that, he has been protected. When you really look at it in terms of that, how many times he's been beaten, just since he's come back, he has largely been protected. So when somebody beats him and beats him clean, like Hangman did, or like Ospreay did, it does feel like a big deal. It does feel special. But I still don't think we've seen the last of this. This can't be the end. So I'm looking forward to more from these two. MJF is not going to allow this loss to exist without there being repercussions. I can assure you. Alex, thank you for the $25. Bree thanks you. Mercedes Mone against Momo Watanabe for the TBS Championship. Momo was having none of Mercedes dancing here at the beginning of this match, and there was a shoving contest that led to Mercedes hitting a shoulder tackle, but she danced too much, and so Watanabe hit a series of kicks. Those kicks, let me tell you something about Momo's kicks. These kicks that this woman was delivering, these kicks were fucking lethal, okay? She was laying these kicks in, and that was really the story of the match. She was wrecking Mercedes with these kicks. And there was one in particular that I'll mention when we get towards the end that just looked pretty brutal. So there was a spot where both women were on the apron, and Watanabe looked like she wanted a crunchy. Mone, though, countered into a powerbomb off the apron, and Momo got her hands locked behind her head to try to absorb the impact, because she hit the floor pretty hard. So they showed Billy Starks up in a luxury suite. She was taking notes. We've seen a couple of confrontations in the back in the last few weeks with Mercedes and Billy Starks, which gives me hope for what might be coming soon. And they brought up actually on commentary, her association in the past with Athena, the Ring of Honor Women's Champion. So Mercedes wanted a Monet maker. Watanabe rolled through into a crunchy for a 2 count. Mercedes was able to come back. She hit 2 of the 3 amigos. Watanabe put the brakes on, hit 2 of her own, and then trapped Mercedes in a tree of woe and was wearing her out with more kicks. So both women, they're trading cross-face attempts and chicken wing attempts. Crowd is getting really into it as the match goes on. And Mercedes took too much time. She went up top. She got cut off with an avalanche spinning Uranagi. Watanabe wanted her peach sunrise. Monet rolled out, but Watanabe held onto the wrist, and she started firing off kicks. And the last kick that she connected with caught Mercedes right in the fucking mouth. And immediately, I'm looking for blood. I'm looking for blood to start pouring out of this woman's mouth. I think what happened is she probably hit her more on the chin, because I could have sworn I saw a chin bruise on her chin when the match was over. But she immediately grabbed her mouth, and it just looked, it looked bad. It looked like, holy shit, that's going to be a bad night for Mercedes. So Watanabe fired off a buzzsaw kick. Mercedes just barely got the shoulder up on the pin attempt. And Momo went up top, missed the Meteora. That allowed Mercedes to hit a crossbody. And actually, that's we'll get back to that spot in a second, because Momo may have gotten hurt. Monet Maker connects. She immediately transitions into the Statement Maker, and she got the tap out to retain the title. I mentioned that Momo may have gotten hurt. I haven't seen the update since, but there was an update. I mean, at this point, what was it, 17 hours ago? But PW Insider had an update that Momo Watanabe was carried to the back after her match with Mercedes Moné. It appeared that she may have hurt her ankle coming off the ropes late in the match. And that was the spot where she was going for a Meteora. Mercedes moved out of the way, so she landed on her feet, and it looked like her leg or her ankle buckled. It didn't bend in a noticeably, horrendous way. So she may have tweaked it. I don't know what happened, but clearly something happened. And the match ended not long after that, so I can't really speak to, how bad the leg may be hurt. She may have just tweaked her ankle. She may have just rolled her ankle if she needed help to the back. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but that's the spot where it happened. This was another really good title defense by Mercedes. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, man, I was looking so forward to this match. Man, they've been building this story with these two women for so long, like Toni and Mariah. No, this didn't have a story. The story was that Momo was able to choose the championship that she went after because she won a match at the Tokyo Dome in January. And she chose to go after Mercedes. Now, this was not their first match. They've wrestled before. So she was trying to get revenge. She was trying to, get her big win over Mercedes and take the title from her. It's a very basic story, but not much of one. The match itself, though, was actually very good. And this is the story with Mercedes in AEW. She has strung together a lot of good to very good matches. Very few of them have any sort of redeemable story. Very few of them have any sort of creative behind it that gets you excited to want to see the big match or is compelling in any way. It's not. The matches are good. I can't say anything more than that, though. They're just matches. It's just a way for her to go out there and rack up these wins. She got her 4 belts. Here's the latest challenger of the month. Hopefully they could start crafting actual stories. And I think that there's a great story waiting with the Ring of Honor Women's World Champion. Because my hope is that the Billy Stark stuff is ultimately going to lead to Athena showing up on AEW television. They could very well build to an Athena-Mercedes match in Texas at All In. That's what I'm looking ahead and hoping for. Of course, I could be sitting here in a few months and you could look back and point and laugh at me for the mere thought that Athena would be featured on AEW television. But I have hope that that might be the case. So after this, we had a number 1 contenders match. Swerve Strickland and Ricochet. The winner of this match would become the number 1 contender for the AEW Women's World Championship. Did I say Women's World Championship? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Obviously, this was not a number 1 contenders match for the Women's World Championship. This was a number 1 contenders match for the AEW World Championship. There we go. Pretend you didn't hear that. Ricochet walks out, and he is wearing the embassy robe that he stole, with a few modifications to it because he had his logo emblazoned on the back of it. So Swerve, he comes out. They gave him kind of a special entrance here. And they had a guy, I don't know who this guy was, but he was banging the drums as Swerve came out, and they played his music over the PA system. But this guy continued to play drums. And the problem is, it was out of sync to the music. So it sounded awful. And I'm sitting here begging. I'm saying, please stop with the drums. So it was completely out of sync, and it ruined the entire entrance. Maybe they were going for something that would have been cool, but it didn't work out. So this match had a quick start, and Swerve mowed down Ricochet. Oh, hey, look at this. They're booing Hogan again. It's the reaction they should have given that main event tonight. There you go. There you go. Free Athena from ROH Purgatory. Well, she's been stuck there for a long time. But imagine what the match would be like. Mercedes and Athena on a big stage, like Texas. I'm down for it. Swerve is relentless here at the beginning of this match, going after Ricochet. And Ricochet's outside the ring now. Prince Nana comes over, and he is trying to calm Swerve down. Swerve doesn't realize who it is, and he shoves Nana. And Nana goes down to the ground. And so Nana's very upset about this. He looks up at Swerve. He's like, what the hell? Swerve realizes what he did. He looks apologetic. But that distraction there allowed Ricochet to walk the barricade, and he caught Swerve with a house call kick. While Swerve was looking over at Nana, who was so upset by what happened here that he opted to leave. And he walks out. And not only does he walk out, he flips off Swerve as he walks to the back. And Ricochet sees this, and he's smiling, and he's waving goodbye. So Ricochet is, at one point during this match, he started to trash talk Leslie Jones, who is one of the celebrities that is in the crowd here. Nigel McGuinness had no idea who this person was. And he thought it was, this is what he said, he thought it was Prince Nana's mother. Excalibur had to let him know who she was and her past on SNL. And I'll say this, she was super into this match. Like, she was so animated, and she was standing up. She was ranting and raving and screaming. She was sweating. This woman was sweating profusely. She was sweating more than Swerve and Ricochet were. But she was into it. So taking too long in the corner, Swerve cut Ricochet off. Both men were teetering on top. Ricochet did a springboard Dragon Rana, only for Swerve to roll through into a power bomb, into a power slam for a 2 count. That was a great sequence. Both men went to the apron. They traded kicks. Ricochet managed a poison Rana on the edge of the ring, which luckily looked a lot better than it did with Hologram on the pre-show. Ricochet brought Swerve to the Spanish announce table. Couldn't get him up for whatever it was that he was going for, and that allowed Swerve to hit a vertebreaker on the desk, which did not break. And do you know why this desk did not break? Because as Excalibur tells us every single week, it's solid oak. Table won't break. You may as well just make it out of concrete at this point. You ever think about that? If they were so concerned about wrestlers using the announce tables, you would think that at some point they would make them out of something like concrete. That way, the first bump that you take on it, they ain't going to do that again, right? Like a little kid touching a hot stove. You do it once, you don't do it again. See, I don't think these people really give a shit about the health and welfare of the wrestlers. They would have fixed it by now. But they have solid oak tables, according to Excalibur in AEW. So a vertebreaker does not break the table. Back in the ring, Strickland hit the Swerve stomp. Ricochet kicked out. So Ricochet tries a low blow. He gets blocked. So he went to the eyes. And then he hits a Northern Lights into a brainbuster, goes up top. Ricochet hits a picture-perfect 630 senton, only gets a 2 count. Prince Nana reappears, and he goes over, and in the corner of the ring is the embassy robe, and he grabs it, and he regains possession of the robe, gets a big pop. As he puts the robe on, though, Ricochet hits a suicide dive, and he wipes out Prince Nana, and he puts the robe on. Strickland tried to dive. It looked like the spot was going to be that Ricochet would catch him and then would deliver a Death Valley driver on the floor out of midair. And that is what happened. But the catch wasn't totally clean. And the momentum was taking Swerve over. So he just went and did the DVD. And he's lucky he didn't break his fucking neck. Like, it looked like he dropped him in such a way where he could have broken his neck. Thankfully, he was okay. Ricochet got in the face then of Dr. Ken. Ken Jeong was in the front row. So back inside, Ricochet hit Vertigo. Again, Swerve kicked out. Then he wanted the Spirit Gun. Nana pulled at the robe because Ricochet was wearing it. So he's pulling at the robe. And he tried to wrestle it away from him. Strickland got a roll up for 2, but on the kick out, he got sent into Nana. And Ricochet almost stole a pin. Strickland, though, popped up. He hit 2 house calls for another near fall. This was the night of near falls. Finally, big pressure connects, and Strickland gets the pin to become the number 1 contender for the AEW World Championship. After the match, Strickland gained possession of the robe. He dropped down to 1 knee, and he presented it to Prince Nana. And Nana took the robe. They both hugged. He did his little Swerve dance, placing the robe on Swerve. This was a great moment, and the fans loved it. This was an excellent match. This was the best match of the night up until this point in the show. I will say this about Swerve. When the spotlight shines brightest, there are very few performers in AEW. There are very few performers in wrestling, regardless of promotion, that can do what Swerve does and that go out there and are better than Swerve. In AEW, I think of Kenny Omega and I think of Will Ospreay, both of whom did that on this show. But Swerve is in the conversation with both of them. He's every bit as good as them when it comes to those types of matches and those types of situations. And that's why he's in the position he's in now, where he's the number 1 contender and should win the AEW World Championship next month. But this was excellent. Now, there were one too many near falls down the stretch for my liking. It didn't hurt the match, but I wasn't a huge fan of that. It could have hurt the other matches, which is the risk you run. I mean, this match went on pretty early in the show. I mean, they wrestled this like it was a main event. And it was so early in the show, it was almost like, all right, well, you're kicking out of everything. You're making it awfully tough, for reactions when it comes to the other matches. And it ended up not being a huge deal, but you do run that risk. They got a lot of time, though. Actually, the first 3 matches on this show got around 20 minutes. So they told the story with the embassy robe. It got the big reaction when he gave it back to Prince Nana. I will say this about Ricochet before we get to the next match. Ricochet has really found his groove as a heel. And, people still make fun of him and they talk about what a terrible promo he is. And yeah, he's not a great promo. He's not. And he's never going to be. But it fits the gimmick. Where he goes out there, he gets great heat. And I do think that, pairing him off with somebody, and it wasn't Prince Nana. Prince Nana didn't turn on Swerve. I thought there was a chance that might happen. Bring in Samantha Irvin. Bring Stokely Hathaway back to TV. I don't know where he's been. Whoever it is, I do think that he will benefit from having somebody with him. But even now on his own, he's managed to get himself to a place where he goes out there and he gets great heat. He's going out there and having good matches, but he's getting good heat for this character work that he's doing. It works for him. When he goes out there and he cuts these promos that sound cheesy and he makes bird noises, it works for him. It works for his character. And I do think he's in a much better position now in AEW than he would be right now in WWE had he not left. That I am certain of. So I don't know what's next for him. I don't know if they're going to try to do more with him and Swerve. It feels to me like that chapter is over now. But whatever they do with him next, I'm curious to see, what direction they take him in. We had Kazuchika Okada defending the Continental title against Brody King. When they announced this match, it came out of nowhere. It came out of, I think, a couple of interactions that the two of them had on Collision, right? Never on Dynamite. And they tacked it onto this show. And I knew it would be good, but they put this on the show. This did not need to be on this show. What we ran into again tonight is a recurring issue with these AEW shows. And I'm sorry, I don't care how great the matches are. I don't care if it's just banger match after banger match after banger match, okay? And there were a lot of them on this show. These shows are too fucking long. And it really does hurt the flow of the show. Now, if you would have had a better main event on this show, they probably would have gotten a better reaction. But you could tell in certain points in the matches that came later in the show, there was an ebb and flow to it because the fans needed to be able to come down after everything that they were seeing. These AEW shows, the stuff they throw at you. Just look at the women's world title match and the cage match alone on this show. All the blood, all the weapons, the thumbtacks, everything that we saw, and they don't give you time to recover from what you've just seen before it's already into the next match. And so they don't pump the brakes. What is it that Jacob Fatu says when he comes out on TV? All gas, no brakes. That's the perfect description of an AEW pay-per-view. It's just this breakneck pace, but they have to do it because they have so many matches on the card. They have no choice. They're going to run out of time. And that is still something that is plaguing these shows. I'm sorry, I don't care how great the cards are. They would benefit greatly by shaving off at least a couple of matches, right? I'm not saying do what Triple H does and have fucking 5 matches or 4 matches on every show. But you don't always have to have 8, 9, 10 matches on a fucking show. It really would help the pacing of these shows. And it would help, I think, the things that are on the show mean more and register more if they didn't try to just squeeze so much shit into them. That is still a recurring problem. This match right here did not need to be on this show. You could have done this as a main event on Collision. That's what this was. It was a good match. When it was over, though, I'm sitting here going, did we really need to see this match tonight? I don't think we did. Was there some grand story that warranted this match being on this show? No. The answer was no. But Okada grabbed the Continental title late in the match. Brody got it away from him, set him up on a chair, hit a running crossbody up against the barricade, and there was a running senton back inside that got a near fall, and he dared Okada lay it in. So they trade strikes. Okada missed the drop kick that led to King taking his head off with a lariat. He wanted a pile driver. Okada powered into the air raid crash on the knee, followed that with a top rope elbow, and he did the Rainmaker pose into the flip off to the fans. Brody dodged a Rainmaker into a corner Death Valley driver and a cannonball that got him a close 2. So he wanted a pile driver on the apron. Okada got a backdrop followed by a shotgun drop kick up against the barricade, and Okada tosses a chair into the ring. But it was a diversion. The referee, Rick Knox, not hard to divert his attention. As he goes to take it away, that allowed Okada to hit King with the Continental title. Only got a 2 count though. And Okada wanted a Rainmaker. Brody again hit a big-time lariat. And Okada was able, though, to avoid the Gonzo bomb. And then eventually he did connect on the Rainmaker. And he retains the Continental title. This was good. But not anything that couldn't have been saved for the weekend. We're all just waiting for the inevitable meeting anyway with Kenny Omega. Every single Okada match that he has between now and July doesn't even matter. It's just filler. It's all just building to the match that we all know we're going to get. They've already teased it. In July, it all in. Frankly, it's the only reason that Okada has the Continental title in the first place. So they better hope that neither of these guys get injured between now and then, because that's going to fuck everything up. The Hurt Syndicate, speaking of fucking things up, they were here to fuck some shit up. They went against the Outrunners to defend the AEW tag team titles. Nigel McGuinness said that if the Outrunners win the titles tonight, he is going to do commentary on Collision next week in his underwear. And Tony Schiavone said that now he doesn't want to see new champions crowned. It's a good thing I won't be here. I don't have to watch that episode. So Truth Magnum, Shelton Benjamin, they start this out. Benjamin is no-selling his offense. Turbo Floyd tags in, and he decks Benjamin with a right hand. Benjamin avoids a roll-up. He misses a blind tag. Gets clotheslined to the floor. Bobby Lashley, he gets his hands on Turbo Floyd, but he gets sent crashing outside. So now MVP has his squad, and he's regrouping with them on the outside. And now that they have regrouped, it was pretty much all Hurt Syndicate. Not entirely, but it was mostly all Hurt Syndicate from here. So they're wrecking shop, and again, the Outrunners, they got a little bit of offense in, but not a lot. And this all ended with Lashley planting Truth Magnum with a spine buster. Benjamin hit the pop-up knee. Lashley hit a spear. They repeated the same sequence on Turbo Floyd, and Shelton Benjamin gets the pin. When the match was over, because I'm wondering what's next now. What's next for the Hurt Syndicate? What great challengers do they have lined up for these men now to defend their tag team titles against? And the camera cuts to Leo Rush and Action Andretti in the crowd watching on. This is the state of the AEW tag team division. This is who's up next for Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. I don't think that's going to end very well for them. But hey, it'll be a collision match they could do. But after they make short work of those two, my question is, who's next? Are they just going to bring back the Young Bucks? Are they really just going to bring back the Young Bucks to try to get their titles back? Like, is that the plan here? I don't know what the plan is if not. Private Party is done, right? They're done. They're buried and done. I don't know who would be next. They were teasing something with the Murder Machines, and then they got away from it, but nobody cares about that because the Murder Machines lose all the time. So who gives a shit? Who else is there? Who am I not thinking of? I mean, I guess they could take Undisputed Kingdom, the Hounds of Hell. I don't think they want to put the belts yet on the Hounds of Hell. Hounds of Hell would make sense. Hounds of Hell, though, is a few months down the road. Who else is there? FTR? Been there, done that. Young Bucks? Been there, done that. Then we had Timeless Toni Storm against Mariah May for the AEW Women's World Championship in a Hollywood ending match. This was Falls Count Anywhere in the building. Jim Ross joined on commentary for this. Mariah was wearing a white veil as she came out. And she sprinted up the ramp at Toni when Toni Storm came out. She sprinted up the ramp at her, and things kicked off on stage. They didn't waste any time. Mariah wanted a suplex off the stage. I mean, she's already trying to suplex this woman off the stage. The bell just rang. Honestly, watching this match, it felt to me like they might have had their time cut. That was how I was feeling as I'm watching this. And just the pace at which they were working. I mean, there was a sense of urgency to it that you could say, well, it's just the nature of the feud. True, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to find out if they had some time shaved off of this. So Mariah wanted a suplex off the stage. Toni tried a backdrop, and Mariah instead opted for a pile driver on the stage. Mariah pulled out a taser, and Luther was there and tried to take it away from her. So Mariah hit a drop kick, and she launched Luther. There was a table set up with a bunch of, it looked like a teapot. I don't know what was on this table, but he ends up getting launched over the table, and so that was the end of Luther. So that distraction allows Toni to hit a sky high off the stage through a table off to the side of the stage. Mind you, we're still in the first 90 seconds of this match. So they finally make it to ringside, and Mariah tried to scurry away. Toni swept the legs out, though, on the barricade. She got crotched, and Toni hit a draping DDT off the barricade on the floor. Toni missed a hip attack against the barricade. That allowed Mariah to hit Storm Zero on the ring steps. And Toni, she must have hit an artery because they cut away from her. When they cut back to Toni Storm, she was bleeding a gusher. Remember Eddie Guerrero? That first time against JBL looked like he hit an artery. I think he did. That's what Toni looked like here. And within a few minutes, like we talk about like white people, black people, people of all kinds of shit. She was part of the red people. Like she was covered. You couldn't even see her skin underneath. Like you couldn't tell who it was. Just covered in blood. This woman was. So Mariah tosses chains and chairs into the ring. In the ring, Toni was trapped in the Tree of Woe, had a chair placed up against her face. Mariah hit a sweet cheek music. Toni made a comeback, and she sent Mariah to the floor. Both women grabbed buckets. And each bucket had shards of glass in them from broken champagne bottles. So Storm and May, they taped their fists up, and they dipped their fists into the buckets and into the broken glass. And so what we ended up with here was a fucking Taipei death match. I'm watching this. I come into this show thinking that I'm going to see Toni Storm and Mariah May, and I end up with Ian and Axel Rotten on this show. So Toni decks Mariah with a shot, and that busts Mariah open. So now we got double juice in this match. Toni pours glass out all over the ring, and I hate the glass shit. So she pours glass out all over the ring. She goes for a big kick. Mariah smashes a bottle between her legs. They fight up the ropes, and Mariah is biting at the bloody wound on her head, hits a head scissors onto the glass before following that up with Mayday on the glass, only for a 2 count. And at that point, we got this incredible overhead shot, this overhead camera shot of Toni Storm laying in the middle of the ring, covered in blood, glass all around her. Like this shot actually was very cool. So she looked like, she really did. She looked like she was in a death match. She looked like she was in a Taipei death match. So Mariah tried to pull Toni up. Toni caught her, though, with a Storm Zero. And Toni went to ringside, and she grabs the bloody white shoe from earlier in their feud. It really kicked off their feud. They had been together up until that point. Mariah won the Owen Hart tournament, and that was the night where she took the shoe, and she beat the shit out of Toni Storm and busted her open with it. That was last summer. Kicked off this entire thing. So Mariah crawls up the ramp. She's trying to get away. She's crawling up the ramp, and she sees the AEW Women's World title is laying there. Toni, though, meets her up there, stomps her head onto the title before whipping her with the belt. Toni then grabs the shoe, but she seems to have a moment of doubt. That gave Mariah the opening for Mayday on the stage, only for a 2 count, because again, it's false count anywhere. Toni gets possession of the shoe, repeatedly smashes Mariah in the head with it, just like Mariah did to her last year. And then she hits Storm Zero through a table on the stage before covering her to win the most violent match, the bloodiest, most violent match in the history of the AEW women's division. This has officially surpassed Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker lights out. Find me another women's match in the history of this company as bloody and brutal as this one. If nothing else, they certainly moved into the number one spot here in terms of that. And the best part of this was the very end, as Toni is laying on top of Mariah, on the big screens, they have the message, the end. Like you would see, like in black and white, like what you would see at the end of those old movies. And it just says the end, which was very appropriate because that's what this was. This was the end of their story. This was the third match. This was the final match. This was the blow-off. And they certainly worked it like a blow-off, given how violent it was and everything that they did here. But this was indeed the end. And it will go down as one of the all-time great rivalries in the 5-year history of this company, male or female. Male or female. One of the best stories that they have told and one of the best rivalries in company history. It was violent. It was gory. It was bloody. It was a very fitting blow-off. And my only critique, well, I have two of them. One is not their fault, though. I wish that they would have leaned more into the false count anywhere stipulation. It's one of my favorite stipulations, especially when they take advantage of it and they go backstage or they go out of the building. And I was really hoping that they would take advantage of that, and they didn't. Now, I understand them not going into the crowd because they were they were bleeding. And you don't want to have them all over the crowd if they're bleeding buckets all over the place. But they really did. They went to the stage and they went to the ring, and that was it. So I just feel like they didn't take full advantage of the stipulation. My other critique, they only got 12 minutes. They gave these two women 12 minutes, which is why I feel like their time may have been cut. 12 minutes for the blow-off of this great story that has been playing out now for over a year for the Women's World Championship. And they gave Mercedes Moné and Momo Watanabe over 18 minutes. There is something very wrong with this picture. That the Mercedes match, the TBS title match, which had no story coming into it, gets almost 20 minutes. And they can't give these two women more than 12 for their world title. That's bullshit. So that has nothing to do with anything they did. That's not their fault. But that was my other issue with this match. Outside of that, I thought it was an excellent symphony of violence between these two women. And then we had Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita for the AEW International Championship. Takeshita came into this with 2 wins previously over Omega. And Omega told him coming into this, I dare you to do it again. I dare you to beat me again. Taz replaced Jim Ross on commentary. Don Callis also joined the announce team. Takeshita distracted the referee while Omega was at ringside a few minutes into the match. So Callis got up and he started throwing some punches at Omega, and then he pretended he hurt his hand as he sat back down. Shivani called Callis a horrible person, and Callis said that he's been called worse things by better people. So Takeshita targeted Kenny's previously diverticulitis-ridden gut throughout this match. Takeshita kept Omega grounded inside, and Kenny snapped off a Hurricane Rana. He sent Takeshita to the floor. That allowed Kenny to signal for the Terminator dive. And he ends up getting tripped up by Don Callis. So that distraction allowed Takeshita to fly in with a clothesline over the top before hitting a release German suplex on the floor. Takeshita flipped the table over, there's a table outside, and hit a front face suplex onto it, then turned it on its side and did the same thing. And so Kenny now, because he went midsection first onto that side of the table, now he's selling his gut. After multiple sentons in the ring, Paul Turner, the referee, he's checking on Kenny. That delay leads to Takeshita trying another one, but Omega got the knees up. And Omega fired up. He dodged a Takeshita line, hit a Snapdragon. As he went for it again, though, Takeshita escaped. He faked a high punch, but he connected on a punch to the midsection. And Takeshita went to go charge. Omega fired off a V-trigger. Omega signaled for another one. Takeshita, though, countered into a blue thunder bomb. What a thing of beauty this was. Only got a 2 count out of it, but it was a thing of beauty. So we got a haluva kick from Takeshita. I could see where he drew his inspiration from. He hit a haluva kick. He wanted an avalanche blue thunder bomb. Omega escaped, only for Takeshita to waffle him with a lariat out of the corner to the floor. Takeshita climbed to the top, and Omega, though, did a springboard sunset bomb back into the ring for a 2 count. V-trigger connects, but Kenny didn't have the strength to get him up for the one-winged angel. So Takeshita almost got one of his own, but they traded tombstone attempts. Takeshita hit one, held on, and then hit a bastard driver for a near fall. Takeshita hits the power drive knee. Kenny kicks out at 2. So Takeshita does it again, and this time, Kenny kicks out at 1. And the crowd exploded. I think they did a spot like this in the Omega and Hangman tag match against the Bucks at Revolution back in 2020. I want to say that was the first one, the first match in this company that had the big 1 count kick out, and people went nuts for it. If that's the case, if I'm thinking of the right match, kind of appropriate that Kenny is in this match 5 years later on the same show, and he does the kick out at 1, and we've seen him do that before. He did it with Ospreay, and the people go nuts for it. So they're losing their minds. And Takeshita had this great look of shock. Like after Kenny kicked out, they kept the camera on Takeshita, and then they zoomed in on his face, and he had this just wonderful look on his face. So this was great. Takeshita hit a wind-up forearm, missed the raging fire as Omega hit a ripcord knee and a pile driver for 2. So we had a bunch of knees. Takeshita was daring Omega for more, but he blocked a shot with some forearms. Kenny was there for a V-trigger and a poison rana. And the finish came with both men. They were countering out of finisher attempts, and they were trading pin attempts until Omega got a crucifix for the flash pin to win the title. So yes, Kenny Omega wins the International Championship basically with a roll-up here in this match. And look, if the idea is to protect Takeshita for a rematch and then have Kenny win with his move in that match, because he tried the one-winged angel at one point here, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't get him up for it. If the idea is to protect Takeshita, at least long enough to do this one more time, and then we get a more decisive finish, then I understand that. So we'll see if that's what ends up happening. But yeah, the idea here that they were trying to convey to us on commentary is that, you know, Kenny was suffering. He was getting his midsection targeted, and he was in a lot of pain and taking all the abuse, and he just had to find a way to win. It wasn't so much that he decisively beat Takeshita, he just survived him, right? That was the idea. And it does. It protects Takeshita because he was not decisively beaten. So to that end, I can understand why they did the finish that they did. Think about this. This was only Kenny's 4th match back after over a year off from an injury that almost killed him, right? Very serious injury. It could have at the very least been a career ender, if not worse. Missed over a year of action. Only his 4th match back, and look at the kind of match that he went out there and had with Takeshita. Even the tag match at Grand Slam, his 1st match back. The match with Gabe Kidd at the Tokyo Dome was going to go down as one of the best matches all year. It may still be in the lead for the best match this year. And that was his 1st match back. He's a special performer. It's like he never missed any time at all. So anybody wondering if, you know, Omega's lost some speed on his fastball, yeah, he's older. He's more beat up. What is he now, 40? But you know what? He goes out there and still puts on some of the best matches that you'll ever see. And tonight was another example of that. And for all the praise that I can give to him and that he usually gets, I also think it's important to acknowledge Takeshita. You know, because Takeshita deserves as much credit as he does. This is not a one-man show here. It takes 2 to go out there and have the kind of match that these 2 guys had. And he has matured into one of the best performers in the entire world. Not just in this company. He's got like 3 or 4 contracts with different companies. That he's in high demand. And no matter where he is, whether it's Japan, whether it's AEW, Maple Leaf Pro up in Canada for Scott D'Amore, CMLL, he just had his first match there a few weeks ago. Doesn't matter where. Doesn't matter with who. Always goes out there, and he knows how to put on the best match that you will see all night. He's a special performer. I'm happy to see him getting his flowers. I love that for him. I love that he's got all these contracts now and he's working all over the place. I think it's great. So he deserves a lot of credit for this as well. Kenny winning the title, though, was the right decision. It was absolutely the right call to make. All roads lead to Texas and hopefully a unification match between Omega and Okada, because the Continental title is not needed. One international champion is all we need. We do not need a Continental title. This was the best thing on the entire show up until this point. And I have to put that little caveat in there because we still had a Will Ospreay match coming up. That was the next match. So you have to say it. You have to say up to this point, because if he hasn't gone on yet, then you know that's probably going to change. And it did. And up next, it was Will Ospreay against Kyle Fletcher inside of a steel cage. This is the first time that Kyle Fletcher has been in a cage match. Even Ospreay, I mean, he's had a couple, but not that many. That's about it. He's had a couple of cage matches in his career. That's it. One singles cage match before this. That was like back in 2017. So it was a very unique stipulation for these two that they're not used to. Fletcher comes out first, and the first thing he does is he scales the cage, climbs to the very top of the cage, and he stands there. I would shit myself. Like, I'm afraid of heights anyway. I mean, he's standing there. I don't know if he's afraid of heights or not, but if I were up there, I better be wearing dark pants. But he's standing there, and he's waiting for Ospreay to come out. So here comes Will Ospreay, and of course, what does he do? He climbs to the top of the cage. So now they're standing on top of the cage. They're starting on top of the cage. Now, there's no top on the cage. So Ospreay's on top in one corner. Fletcher's on top in the opposite corner. And they just ended up climbing down. So, I mean, it made for a good visual, but then they just climbed down. So it didn't really lead to anything. It was just for the visual of it. Bell rings. They hold nothing back. Ospreay wants an os cutter. He gets caught. He gets lawn darted. This is a few minutes into the match. And he gets lawn darted into the side of the cage. And he gets busted open. So now we have more blood on this show. As if we didn't get enough of it in the women's match. Now we have more blood. We're not done yet. Fletcher then drives Ospreay's head into the cage. And you can see there's blood on the cage. And Fletcher begins to lick the cage. Ospreay fights back. He fires off so many hard chops that Fletcher's chest is bleeding. So more blood. And he signaled for the hidden blade. Fletcher got a big boot, though, and a half-and-half suplex for the reset. Fletcher ends up getting catapulted a few minutes later into the cage. Now he's busted open. Even more blood. Fletcher avoids a Stormbreaker. He crotches Ospreay on the ropes before hitting a Liger bomb. And Fletcher fires off some Kawada kicks, but he was too busy licking the blood off of his hand to realize that Ospreay had risen back to his feet. So we get Kawada kicks from Ospreay, who returns the favor, and he's licking his hand until Ospreay tries hidden blade. Fletcher hits a thrust kick. We got a wild series of counters here that led to Fletcher wanting another Liger bomb. Ospreay, though, pops up into a snap DDT. Fletcher spins out of a Stormbreaker, and he spikes Ospreay with a brainbuster for 2. Here comes Mark Davis. And he's walking down the ramp, and he has a sack with him. Okay, here comes Mark Davis and his sack. And in the sack, in the bag, is a pair of bolt cutters. And he takes the bolt cutters and he cuts the door off the lock, or he cuts the door off the lock, cuts the lock off the door. What's the time check here? 1:51. Yeah, I'm fading fast here. So he cuts the lock off the door. So now the door is open. Ospreay pulls the door shut, but it was just a way to kind of lure him in, because Davis is now climbing the steps. He's trying to reopen the door because Ospreay's, pulling the door shut. Ospreay just wanted to sucker him in so that he could smash the door back into his face, which is what he did. And so Ospreay slams the door right into his head. Davis falls off the steps and he goes tumbling to the floor. So the bag that he brought into play here also happened to have a barbed wire baseball bat inside. So Ospreay, he's winding up with it, and he levels Fletcher in the ribs, and he levels Fletcher in the back with it, rakes it across the face. Ospreay then lets out a bang bang for Cactus Jack. Fletcher is begging off, right? He's bloody, he's battered, he's on his knees in the middle of the ring here. He is begging off, and he pulls out of his pants a United Empire armband, and he's showing it to Ospreay, and he puts the armband on his arm, and he does the old, United Empire hand signal. So Ospreay flips him off. He's not falling for this shit. He flips him off, and he goes for the home run shot, and Fletcher dives in with a low blow. So he catches him low. Fletcher then wipes the blood from his face with the armband, shoves the blood-soaked armband in Ospreay's mouth. And so then Fletcher gets the bat, and he misses a wild shot. I mean, he swung for the fences. Ospreay ducked it, and Ospreay takes his head off with a hidden blade, follows that with a Stormbreaker. Here comes Mark Davis into the cage. What's the point of having a cage match again? I love this trope in wrestling, by the way. Like, we're going to have a cage match. And, everybody knows that the cage doesn't keep anybody out, in any company. So now Mark fucking Davis comes into the cage, but Mark Davis is busted open. And to me, this is where they jump the shark with this stuff. I can understand Toni Storm getting blood and Mariah May getting blood. I can understand Will Ospreay getting blood and Kyle Fletcher getting blood. Why the fuck does Mark Davis have to bleed? And I don't mean he had a little cut on his head. He's wearing the crimson mask, from the shot with the cage door that got sent back into his face. Why does he have to bleed? Why does everybody have to bleed? I feel like I should bleed. Maybe I should bust myself open during these reviews. I feel left out. I saw Mark Davis bleed. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. Even this guy has to bleed. Why is that necessary? So he jumps into the cage. He breaks up the pin. And Davis helps Fletcher to his feet. And he's screaming at Ospreay, you wanted this. You wanted this. So Aussie Open, they go for their old Coriolis tag team finish. Ospreay, though, counters into a Poison Rana on Fletcher. And he punches a chair. Actually, he throws a chair to Davis, who catches it. And he punches the chair back into his face. So they get Davis out of the ring. And they relock the cage. Ospreay scales the side of the cage. And he's maybe halfway up. And he leaps off the cage, the side of the cage, backwards, into a super Os cutter. Only gets two. Ospreay wraps barbed wire around his arm. And Fletcher tried escaping. He's going to climb the cage. So he is scaling the cage, and the top, what the hell is it? That top part of the cage that allows them to raise it and lower it. The hell's that? What the hell's that? I forgot what it's called. It's like the catwalk they have up there. But anyway, he's fishing around for something, and he finds a screwdriver. The Don Callis screwdriver is hidden away up there on top of the cage, and he jabs it into Ospreay's head as Ospreay is climbing up after him. And then he licks the screwdriver with all of Ospreay's blood on it. He is licking the screwdriver. With all the times that Kyle Fletcher sexually assaulted various inanimate objects here during this match, I'm certain that I'm on some kind of watch list. It just gets to a point where it's it's a little too uncomfortable. He's licking the screwdriver. He's licking the cage. He's licking his fingers. He's licking Ospreay's head and biting at the head. I mean, this guy's a sick fuck. So Ospreay is bleeding even more now. Fletcher hits him in the ribs with it, and he hits him in the head again. Ospreay wants a Styles Clash, though. He makes a comeback, and he wants a Styles Clash. Fletcher, though, rolls through into a brainbuster. So Fletcher sets up a chair, and very similar to what we saw in Dynamite last week, he delivers a brainbuster through the chair. Ospreay kicks out. So Fletcher now brings in a bag full of thumbtacks. And he wants another brainbuster. Ospreay counters into a Styles clash on the thumbtacks, right? That's pretty nuts, right? That's got to be it. Styles clash onto the thumbtacks. And unfortunately for Kyle Fletcher, in the position that he was Styles clashed, he goes basically dick first right onto the thumbtacks. So he got tacks to the yam bag. Poor Sky Blue. I do. I feel bad for her. But he covers him after this move. And so what happens here? Kyle Fletcher kicks out. And honestly, this is the point in the match where I just thought, I threw my hands up and I just thought to myself, okay, we've really jumped the shark here. You're doing a Styles clash onto thumbtacks, and that's not the finish of the match. Like, I knew they had not yet done anything crazy off the top. So I thought, okay, this might not be the end, but like, come on, man. Like a Styles clash on the thumbtacks, what a great way to go out. And he kicks out. And I'm just like, nothing means anything anymore. Nothing means anything anymore. Because of course, not even 60 seconds later, he was back up to his feet like nothing even happened. And that's another one of the big problems I have when we get matches like this in AEW and really anywhere. But we get them a lot in AEW, especially on these pay-per-views where you'll see this incredible, like ridiculous, violent spot, and it's just for a near fall. It's just to set up the next spot, and it doesn't mean anything. And I know, the sickos will cheer and they'll say this is awesome and all that, but I'm watching this and I'm going, man, I just, that sucks. That fucking sucks. Why did you have to do that? So it was just another spot, and he kicked out from it and didn't mean anything. So Fletcher scales to the top of the cage with Ospreay, who has the screwdriver in his mouth as he's climbing. And they're fighting over the screwdriver until Ospreay connects with a shot right to the head. And now they're getting to their feet on top of the cage. So here it is. This is what the match has been building to. And they're trying to get in the right position. And it looks like they're probably going for a Spanish fly, but it's kind of hard to tell. And everybody in the building is holding their breath. I'm sure everybody in the back is holding their breath. All the announcers at ringside, I'm holding my breath. I'm just praying that these guys don't break a leg or kill themselves. And I'm wondering, okay, what are they going to do here? Now, mind you, there's still thumbtacks and all kinds of crap on the mat down below. It's not even like a clean canvas. And so Ospreay delivers a Spanish fly from I guess it might have been a legitimate 15 feet. Their cages are very high. So from 15 feet above, Ospreay delivers a Spanish fly. And that was the crazy spot off the top of the cage that I was waiting for. Ospreay took a bad landing on his hip, and he was limping around and favoring it when the match was over. So no surprise there, right? I mean, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. It's not like he doesn't understand the risks when he does this sort of thing. But he did take a hard fall on his hip. Don Callis at this point gets up from commentary. Ospreay is winding up for the hidden blade. And Fletcher is on his knees now. And he's just staring at Ospreay and he's screaming at him. And he's just saying, I hate you. I fucking hate you. Right? Over and over and over again. And then he gets his head taken off with a hidden blade. And Ospreay picks him up. And he drops him on top of his head with the Tiger Driver 91. And finally, he puts Fletcher away for the win. As cage matches go, it was an incredible spectacle. Lots of blood and lots of weapons. This did not need Mark Davis, okay? This did not need the Mark Davis interference. Mark Davis did not need to bleed. I did not need to see him in the cage at all, okay? So I wish they would have just cut that part out of the match because it was stupid. And I hated the kick out after the Styles clash. We've already documented that. I could find little parts of this match that I didn't like or where I think they went overboard. When it was over, though, I felt like it was an appropriately violent conclusion to a feud between two men who used to be best friends, right? This was a personal issue. This was a personal rivalry between two former best friends who know each other very well. Fletcher went over to the dark side. Ospreay was out for revenge. Fletcher was in there to try to prove himself, that he can be that guy and he can beat Will Ospreay again. And in the end, he just fell short. The key here, and I said this coming in, the key was making sure, because I thought Ospreay was going to win, and I think Ospreay winning is the right decision. But I said they need to do it in a way that protects Kyle Fletcher, in that when he comes out of this match, he looks stronger than he did going into it, even in defeat. Right? There's always a way to do that. As long as he comes out of this looking stronger than he did going into it, then I would call it a success. And they did. You can't say that Kyle Fletcher, all the abuse that he took in this match and everything it took Will Ospreay to put this guy away. So I thought he came out of this match looking like $1 million. Reality is Will Ospreay is the bigger star. And Will Ospreay is the one who needs to begin, he's going to be pushed in the direction of that AEW World title. I don't know when he's going to get it. I don't know if it's going to be this summer. I don't know if it's going to be later. I don't know if it's going to be next year. But that's the direction that he should be moving in. Kyle Fletcher may get there one day. Today is not that day. Will Ospreay is the bigger star. Will Ospreay is going to be the guy in this company very soon. So that was the right outcome. It was an excellent match. Parts of it that bothered me, even with that, it was still an excellent match. Now, Tony Schiavone was at ringside. We actually got a little break here in between matches. We don't get too many of those on these shows. But they had to obviously lift the cage and clean up, so they had no choice. So Tony Schiavone stands up. And right behind the announcers in the front row, we see Ash Avildsen, Damaris Lewis, and Kelly Berglund, who are all connected to this new Queen of the Ring movie that they've been promoting. Of course, they won't promote the fact that Camille, who is under contract to Tony Khan, is actually in a pretty big role in this movie. You would never know that by watching AEW television, by looking at their social media. She has been completely ignored in all of the promotion on their end for this show. But they've been promoting the movie a lot, and I think it's got a very limited release because the guy sounded desperate to try to get people to come out to see it. I think it might be out of theaters in a few days. If it does well, maybe they'll bring it back. So anyway, they're promoting the movie. All of a sudden, unprompted, they give the microphone to Damaris Lewis, who's one of the female stars in the movie. And she says the one thing that she has learned about pro wrestlers is that they learn that they're going to win before anyone else does. So thank you, she says. Nothing like exposing the business right before your big main event. Although, honestly, if you look at even just the previous match, just the cage match alone, there were no fewer than 3 or 4 times in that match that probably exposed the business anyway. So, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really matter. But I heard that, I was like, holy shit. And you could even hear, I don't know if it was Taz or whoever it was on commentary, like, kind of snickered when she made that remark. Like, you put a microphone in this woman's hand. Why would she think that it's even appropriate in that situation to stand there in front of 11,000 people that they had, maybe 12,000 if you count the suites, because they had a big crowd tonight, stand there and say, the thing I learned about pro wrestling is it's all fake. It's all fake. And you guys know who's going to win the matches before anybody else does. Thanks, guys. Like the new learning tree. What? I was blown away by this. Blown away by this. So anyway, with that out of the way, finally, at 11:35 p.m., the AEW World Champion Jon Moxley is making his way through the crowd for the main event, in which he is defending his championship against Adam Copeland. Jim Ross tells us to expect anything in this environment, after we had already seen everything we could possibly see in every other match. What else was he expecting us to see other than shit in this main event? The first half of this match was boring as shit. Okay, the crowd was very quiet because it was very late and because they had already seen everything there was to see. Think of everything I just described to you from the cage match. Now you're going to throw Jon Moxley and Adam Copeland out there? You talk about a come down. And to be fair to them, I mean, you could put almost anybody in this spot, and I think people would have felt the same way. There's no way you could follow what we just saw between that and the women's match alone. So in the middle of this match, this may have been the best part, honestly, of this entire thing. In the middle of this match, they cut to the Ops. They're sitting up in one of the skyboxes. It's Samoa Joe, Hook, who's eating chips, and Katsuyori Shibata is just sitting there, just intently staring ahead and watching the action. They cut to them at the beginning of the show. I think it might have been during the pre-show. And they showed these guys sitting exactly where they were. I love the idea that they have just been sitting there the entire time, okay? And Joe, like, these guys look so bored. I was like, they had a look on their face like, is this show still going on? So I'm like, holy shit, the Ops, they're still sitting there. They've been watching the show this entire time. I know the feeling. So we skip ahead here. Copeland hit the Impaler DDT. He superplexed Moxley a little while later. He got some polite applause. Copeland put Moxley in a submission hold. Moxley reached the ropes to break it. Once Moxley stood up on the apron, Copeland ran the ropes, and he speared him through the ropes to the floor. Copeland tried to whip Moxley into the ring steps. Moxley was able to reverse it. So Moxley pulls the mats back to expose the concrete floor. Moxley went for a pile driver. Copeland countered into a backdrop. Moxley comes back with a knee strike and a stomp on the concrete. Back inside, Moxley puts Copeland in a bulldog choke. Copeland starts to fade. A few people in the crowd started chanting his name. Copeland reached for the bottom rope, and eventually he was able to get the rope break. So now Moxley is arguing with the referee. He's arguing with Bryce Remsburg, who asks him, like, you know, what are you going to do? And Moxley pie faces him. And he goes to the floor and he brings a chair with him into the ring. So the referee takes it away from him and he's continuing to argue with Moxley. Copeland rolls up Moxley, who kicks out. And in doing so, he kicks him into the referee. And the referee tumbles out of the ring. So there's your ref bump. Okay, Bryce Remsburg has been bumped. And Copeland proceeds then to take the world's worst bump ever for a paradigm shift. So Moxley sets up for a concerto. Copeland kicks the chair back into Moxley's face. And as the clock, I looked at the clock, and as the clock was about to strike midnight, who should come walking down to the ring in the middle of this main event but Wheeler fucking Yuta? And you could hear the collective groan from the crowd. Here comes Yuta. He gets in the ring, and there's Moxley, and there's Copeland, and I'll give you one guess as to what happened next. So Yuta, of course, he nails Copeland with the Busaiku knee. And it wasn't like he hit him with the knee and then he started laughing like this was all part of the plan. He's under the spell of Jon Moxley. What was it that Excalibur said on commentary? It's, what's that syndrome? Where you become loyal to your captor. Forgot what it's called. We know dumb babyface syndrome, but this is a different one. I forgot what it's called. But anyway, that's what they were portraying it as. He had a look on his face like he wasn't even happy, but he did it anyway. It's like, okay, whatever. So Yuta goes outside, and he grabs the briefcase, presumably that has the AEW World title in it. We still have not seen this championship, by the way, since October. So he slides the briefcase into the ring to Jon Moxley. Stockholm, thank you very much. See, I knew it. I knew it. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome. I feel like I have Stockholm Syndrome sometimes when I watch these shows. Thank you. Stockholm. Yeah, I have not been to Stockholm. I would like to actually visit one time. I probably will never get there, but maybe one day. So Moxley now has the briefcase in the ring. Here comes Switchblade, Jay White. who promised that he was going to be here on this show to watch Copeland's back. Jay White gets into the ring, and after wiping out Yuta, he picks up the briefcase. He rears back. He's going to hit Jon Moxley with it. Moxley, though, ducks, and Jay White obliterates Copeland with the briefcase. Like, he nails him in the head with this thing. And he's got a look on his face like, he didn't intend to do that. White ends up leaving the ring. He fights off with Wheeler Yuta. And that's the last we saw of Jay White. All this talk about, I'm going to be there to watch your back, and what's going to happen? Is he going to turn? Is he not going to turn? And that was it. That was the last we saw of Jay White. So Moxley covers Copeland. Bryce Remsburg now recovers from the ref bump. Very slowly begins to administer the count. Copeland kicks out at 2.5. And that got a very tepid reaction from the crowd. Moxley starts arguing with the referee again, but he turns around into a spear. And Copeland covers him, only gets a 2 count. Copeland delivers a second spear and then a third. And now it's like, okay, maybe this is it. So he covers him, and the referee begins counting, but a man in a hoodie drags the referee outside of the ring, and it turns out to be Christian Cage. And the people pop for this because they realize what this means. Right? It means that we're going to get this fucking title off of Jon Moxley is what this means. So he pulls out his world title contract. He signs his name to it. So now once he signed his name to it, I said, okay, well, my idea that Jay White's going to come out and sign it, that's out the window now because he put his name on the contract. But at least we're moving ahead with this finally, right? He's been running around with this contract since August. Signs his name to the contract. And it's official. He's cashing in. And he's being added to the match. So the match now is going from a singles match to a triple threat match. And he immediately delivers a spear to Adam Copeland, and he covers him. Copeland kicks out. Christian then drops Copeland with the kill switch, and he tries again. But here's Moxley. He gets back into the ring, and he dives in, and he locks the bulldog choke on Christian Cage. And eventually, Christian is fading. He's fighting it, but he's fading, and he goes out. And the referee calls for the stoppage. And you should have heard the reaction of this crowd. And it wasn't even like New Day heat or Dominic Mysterio heat or Ricochet heat, right? Like good heat. It's just like, what the fuck did we just see? The reaction was basically the epitome of, are you fucking kidding me? That's what it was. People were shocked, but in the worst possible way. Like, I can't believe they went through with a finish so horrible, uncreative, and as terrible as this one on a show that otherwise was so good, to end it on such a sour note. And we weren't done yet. But to end that main event on that note was, honestly, it was the worst possible decision that Tony Khan could have made. It was awful. And maybe in a month we'll turn around and Swerve Strickland will be the new AEW World Champion, and we'll say, see, they stayed the course for another month, and now Swerve is the champion again. And I hope so. I hope that Swerve Strickland leaves Dynasty as the AEW World Champion. But right now, all I know is, in terms of what they could have done in this main event as compared to what they did, they went with the worst possible outcome. And now we have at least another month of this shit that we have to suffer through until we get to that match between Moxley and Swerve. This finish was horrendous. And the match itself, it suffered for a lot of different reasons. The match itself was not good. It was not good, especially as far as AEW pay-per-view main events. If this wasn't the worst, and I'm not ready to call it the worst, it's among the worst. It is certainly among the worst pay-per-view main events that AEW has ever done. Because they're known for their great pay-per-views. There was nothing great about this. This was terrible. And the fans knew it. So Moxley slowly leaves through the crowd. Before he could fully escape, though, right? He's by one of those tunnels in the crowd. And we see Prince Nana. And he's waving his finger in Moxley's face. So Moxley, I guess he's reminding him about who's next. So Moxley gets up in his face, and the camera pans up and we see Swerve, and he's perched on the barrier on top of the tunnel, and Moxley doesn't see him. And Swerve comes diving off with a swerve stomp and takes out Moxley. And then he celebrated a little bit, and the crowd was very happy to see Swerve. And that's how they went off the air. So what did we get here? We got the very predictable turn of Wheeler Yuta back to where he was a week ago. It wasn't really a turn, right? They were teasing that maybe he had broken the spell of Jon Moxley, but he didn't. So we had the predictable turn, quote unquote, for Wheeler Yuta. We had Jay White's interference, which turned out to be pretty fucking pointless and very uneventful, because it didn't really even play directly into the finish. I mean, he blasted Copeland in the face with it. I'm sure Copeland is going to take issue with that, but it's not like it led into the finish, right? That probably would have been worse, honestly, if that's how the match ended. So that was it for Jay White. He didn't do anything else on this show. Christian, who's been running around with that contract now for all these months, squandered his shot, has nothing to show for it, and we don't have anything to show for it. So Christian's shot now is gone, and so too dies, I think, any chance of him ever being the AEW World Champion. And we have another month at least of the Death Riders holding captive the AEW World title. I said this was Tony Khan's Hell in a Cell 2019, where the show goes off the air and you're just so disappointed or angry or disgusted by what you've seen. This might have been worse in one respect. I mean, that was worse in other respects because that was so bad. But in one respect, this might have been worse. I don't remember much about that Hell in a Cell show in 2019. I believe Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks had a great cell match to open that show, if I'm thinking of the right Hell in a Cell. I couldn't tell you anything else that happened on that show outside of the main event. This show, it was great match after great match after great match, and a lot of goodwill being built up among the audience. A lot of great things you could point to on this show. Not a perfect show, but a pretty damn good show. And to end it on that note was so demoralizing. And especially so late in the night, and you're like, man, I've stayed up for all these 4.5 hours, and I'm hoping that they have some big payoff for me in the end, that I've sat through this entire fucking show, and it's midnight now. And as soon as I saw Wheeler Yuta walk down to the ring, I wanted to vomit. I said, we're getting more of the same. And so Jon Moxley wins. There really isn't anything else to say about it. That sucked. Most everything else on the card was at least good, if not excellent. And I would say the best match of the show, it's tough because there are three that you could, I think there are three that you could point to. Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita, Toni Storm and Mariah May, and the cage match with Ospreay and Fletcher. I thought Ospreay and Fletcher, they got a little too self-indulgent with some of the stuff that they did. There were a lot of callbacks in that match to their history, and some of the stuff, you know, in the recent past between them that I appreciate. There were some spots and stuff they did there that just kind of, you know, turned me off. But it's hard for me to sit here and say that that wasn't anything but the best match on the show. When I look back on it, even despite all that stuff, I probably would still go with Ospreay and Fletcher. And then I would go with the women, and then I would go with Omega and Takeshita. And then maybe Swerve and Ricochet after that. MJF and Hangman. Think about this. It feels like a lifetime ago already. They opened the show, right? That was a very good match. And on this show, MJF and Hangman was probably at best, the fourth best match on the card. Probably number 5. That's how deep this show was in terms of great matches, right? Which is why it sucks that it ended in the way that it did. But I've said my piece. We look ahead now to Dynasty. Hopefully Tony Khan has his wits about him and he will get that championship off of Jon Moxley and not wait for Darby Allin or wait for some white knight to come riding in on their horse. Wait until Texas and make us wait until July to get a new champion. That would be absolutely, beyond awful. This had to end tonight, but it didn't. So it's got to end at Dynasty. Dynasty needs to be the second year in a row that Swerve walks out the AEW World Champion. Period. End of story. And from there, whatever the story is that you want to craft, look, maybe we end up getting Swerve and Hangman. Circle back around to that. Do that in Texas, right? We can bounce different ideas about where to go from there. There's only one thing right now that matters, which is ending this. How many more times are we going to have a pay-per-view that goes off the air with people just being like, right? How many more times do you want that? We got Dynasty, we got Double or Nothing, Forbidden Door, all before we even get to Texas. I don't want to go through this again. I mean, it puts a damper on the entire night. We're going to look at the Twitter poll right now, and I'll bet you, I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised that it's a positive score, because I thought for sure people were just going to shit all over the main event and take it out on this show. And I think the majority of what you see here in this score, 55.8% thumbs up, 44.2% thumbs down. Even still, a lot of that thumbs down, I guarantee you, is that main event. This show deserved a lot more than what you see here, but I totally understand it. It left such a horrible taste in people's mouth. This is what you end up with as far as the Revolution score. A show that deserved much better than what you see there, but that's tied directly into the main event, without question. That's what that is. Let's take a look at your messages. And I thank you, all 2,000 nearly of you, for sticking with me here. I know it's a late night. That's how you know it's an AEW show. We're going to go through your messages here. Hey, David Thiering. I don't know if David's still with us, but David came in with the first message of the night. So, David, you get to kick us off. Let me scroll back here a little bit. David says, nice job on episode 904. I had to do a double take when you said for Revolution that Jericho was fighting gravity. My twisted mind thought that he really was fighting gravity. Oh, he's fighting gravity every day. But thank you, David. I appreciate it. Ace of Masta. Great pay-per-view until the boring WWE style main event and ending. Please win at Dynasty Swerve. Still wish that I could have been there in person if it wasn't for this GBS. GBS? What does that mean? Luis. The days of the Staples Center being WWE slut are over. What? Was not at Revolution tonight, but thank you, Los Angeles, for singing your hearts out. The days of the Staples Center being WWE's slut are over. Well, all right then. Javier. Edge versus Ambrose with a Money in the Bank cash-in by Christian. Well done, Vince. A very WWE-esque main event. It did feel like that, didn't it? And David says, to whoever thought of that main event, off is the direction that you can fuck. Can someone please explain to me why this Death Rider story is continuing? I'm over it, as I am sure a lot of people are. Oh, a lot of people are. A lot of people are, that's for sure. Bender McSimpson, with a couple of super chats, says, so Christian, totally fresh, can't break out of a submission from Moxley, who just wrestled a full match and took 3 spears. Christian looked like a fool. Awful finish. Yeah, I didn't even mention that, but that was kind of the least of my concerns, but yeah, they didn't do him any favors either with that. But again, you know, hey, Cope can't take the finish, I guess. Gotta protect Cope. Bender says, how many times is Jay White going to fight Yuta? Too many. The Real CS says, been thinking about this for a few days now. If the handcuffs were off, how do you see a potential MJF versus CM Punk feud in WWE? Do you think they could top what they did in AEW? If the handcuffs were off, yeah, absolutely. I think it would be great. Lord Toron. Will Kenny Omega versus Okada, Continental title versus International title, be so they can make an AEW Intercontinental Championship? No, I don't think you need to. Then you'll just have people complaining, oh, they're copying WWE. No, you unify them and you have one international champion. Keep the same belt. The name doesn't have to change. The belt doesn't have to change. And that's it. Carlos Galvan. Swerve better win at Dynasty, or I might have to check myself into the Ambrose Asylum. Also, Takeshita's Blue Thunder Bomb is even more beautiful in person. Wow. It's a great move. He says also Kyle Fletcher needs gold before this year ends. Yeah, Kyle Fletcher's got some big things in his future. Brian Mahoney. The thing about historically bad main events, no matter how good anything is before it, cannot overcome the stench. 2015 Royal Rumble comes to mind. One of the greatest matches ever could not overcome it. The triple threat. With Brock, Cena, and Rollins, that was quite great. A Gorilla. A fantastic show with a boring main event and a crappy ending. Textbook case of wrestling blue balls. Alex with the 25. Let's all thank Brother Solo for sacrificing sleep time and even some brain cells for our entertainment. Here's a Brie mode for you. That main event was dreadful. Thank you, Alex. Yes, it was. Sean Glenn. Hangman and MJF not being the number one contenders match doesn't make sense after all that main character talk. Swerve lost how many times up until now? Well, I assume that they're saving one of them. I presume Hangman for the main event in Texas. So they don't want him to become number one contender right now. He won tonight. They don't want him to be number one contender yet. They want to wait. I hope that's the plan. They want to wait a few months. Club Fortune. Death Rider storyline equals Elite storyline from 2024. I mean, they basically just replace one with the other. Jazz Jackrabbit. This was like watching an amazing movie with a horrendous ending that only partially makes sense after the post-credits scene. Ridiculous way to end. Gary Koschuk. Bad pay-per-view, so I'm watching Jurassic Park. What do you call a blind dinosaur? Do you think Thinkosaurus? All hail Gunther. Thank you, Gary. Base Beer says Toni Storm drinks beer in the brown paper bag. She probably does. We've got Dai Tian with the 23. Toni Storm really will have a torn labia now. With that bottle to the crotch, probably. Was a great show in the building. Someone tell Fletcher to lay off the blood. He'll end up with a new fetish. I think it's too late. Ricky Cornflakes Says, Solomonster, you forgot to call Gravity GOAT creator of all life and matter. No, I didn't. Base Beer says, biscuits and gravy made me a man. My God. Biscuits and gravy. Liquid Sharingan. 35 months of membership. One more month. Actually, probably around WrestleMania. Hey, Liquid, thank you for being a member, man. I appreciate that. And Base Beerus gifted a membership to Mystery Deck. We got Dev to Dust with a $5 super chat. Is it true in the 2001 World Series that many people rooted? The hell am I reading here? Rooted. Where did I see voted? For the Yankees over the Diamondbacks. Did you root for the Yankees or the Diamondbacks? I rooted for neither because the Mets were not in it. So I didn't give a shit. That guy, Yeager, says, I like how you compare the weakest parts of the show to the main event. Reminds me of Bret Hart talking about Bill Goldberg. I'll never get tired of that. Justin says Athena is from Texas, so she better be at All In. That's why I said, man, it just makes way too much sense. You're going to bring her to the AEW roster. That's the match to do. That's the place to do it. It just makes so much sense. Nick Grosso says, Adam Cole goes from main eventing the first All In to working with Ring of Honor guys and the Costco guys. His downfall needs to be studied. I think he should go back to WWE when his contract expires. You know what? Adam Cole right now, I don't really see a spot for him in the main event. They have people right now, whether it's Swerve, whether it's Hangman, even MJF. Kyle Fletcher's a new star that they have recently created, who I think will go on to bigger things. Takeshita. I don't really see a spot at the top right now for Adam Cole. I'm not feeling it. I'm not saying he should be relegated to the pre-show, but yeah, I think I'm kind of over it. Jazz Jackrabbit. I know Ricochet lost, but we're all losers unless we can get a Solomonster bird call. At 2:30 in the morning? I don't think so. Prince Vegeta. The plumber wins again. The snowman would put Moxley over Hogan, Austin, Cena, Brett. Such fucking garbage. Base Beerus says Finn. Storm versus May. Yes. That is the end. Base Beerus says maybe the Storm May match was kept short because of the blood loss. No, I doubt that. It's possible. I mean, Toni was bleeding a gusher. I don't think so, though. We got Jason with the $10. Mariah and Toni did not need any more than it got. They packed a ton into it and blew off the feud perfectly. Momo and Mercedes should have gotten 8, mind you. That match should not have had more than Toni Storm and Mariah May. That was a joke. Retro KOH, special day has finally come. 2 years for me. 1 year for the little one. Great stream, great podcast. Love you guys. Yes, with 24 months of membership. Hey, Retro, we are happy to have you, brother. We have got CN Mordecai. So if the International and Continental titles are unified, would that make it the Intercontinental Championship? It could, but I don't think it should be. Eminem is singing Biscuits and Gravy. You know what I think you need to do? I think you need to bust out your WWE The Volume... what was it? WWE The Volume. WWE The Music Volume 10? I forget which one was Biscuits and Gravy on. CN Mordecai. Is there still a chance for Chad Gable, or is he the new Dolph Ziggler? Been listening since 2008. So happy to see how far you've come. Thank you, Mordecai. I think that there is still a chance. I lose more faith by the month. You know, you hope and you support. You think at some point, you know, that moment will come, and then it doesn't. And you feel like they just take that person for granted. And I kind of feel that way about Chad Gable. I don't want to say that his chance has passed him by. I think there's still a chance. I won't completely give up on him doing more than he's doing. RD Beats. Holy shit. RD Beats. Look at this. RD Beats. With a $50 super chat. Sup, Solo. It's Dylan. In my last match, I took a dive from the top to the outside. I caught him, came down onto the concrete, cutting my elbow open, and bled all over the ring. I finished the match, and I went to the ER that night. I'm doing fine now. Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad you're doing okay. That sounds like it probably sucked. Although maybe they chanted, "You're hardcore." But you don't want to get like an infection, and then you end up with all kinds of nasty stuff. So I'm glad you're doing well. Were you not wearing an elbow pad? Maybe you should be wearing elbow pads. But Dylan, thank you, man. Keep me updated on your progress. I always love the updates. Retro KOH just gifted 5 channel memberships. Look at that. I love it. Aaron with the $5 super chat. Waste of Christian's contract. Swerve better beat Mox. This run is historically bad. Time to move on. Also, thanks for staying up so late for us, Solo. It is very late. Thank you, Aaron. Eminem with the 20. A good show, but the ending. 2019 Hell in a Cell all over again. All we were missing was a cameo from the Crypt Keeper to wish you a happy birthday. You remember that, huh? That was a cool gift. Dallas Caballero, I got a stomach bug today, and still the worst part of my day is Tony Khan wasting Christian Cage's title shot. Booking malpractice and a true shame. You know, that's almost as bad as the one person who wrote in once to say that they had buried their grandfather earlier that day, and that still wasn't as bad as having to sit through Monday Night Raw that night. That's when Raw was bad. That's pretty bad. Viram. How much in Super Chat to play the entire Brie Bella theme? 0. Because it would be struck. So we can't do that. Nor would I ever want to. Of all the music I would love to play in full, that is not one of them. BCOM see clearly I would have had MJF steal Christian's title shot because MJF is a sore loser. It would fit his gimmick of taking the easy way out. You know what? Hey, you're not wrong. That would have made a lot of sense. That would have actually made a lot of sense. Would have been better than what they did. Justin G says, Pincushion Yambag Jones equals spot of the night. I'm telling you, man, poor Sky Blue. Poor Sky Blue. Frankie Zito with the $4.99. Was at the show tonight. The crowd, the vibe, and the matches were so much better than the Raw Netflix show up until the main event. What the hell? Go Dodgers. Well, you got mostly a great show. If you would have left early, it would have been perfect. Trill Mexican 305 says, hey Solo, so I got hurt at work last week, came back to work and got a final write-up because I got hurt. I think it is BS. Good thing I got your reviews to cheer me up. Thanks as always, good brother. So they wrote you up because you got hurt? Yeah, that does sound like bullshit. I would fight that. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That guy, Yeager, with the $5 super chat. Thank you for making me spit my Dr. Pepper all over my computer screen with that Jericho versus Gravity commentary. Well, I'm glad you were entertained. And Base Beerus, thank you for the $2. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you. Oh, man. What a night. What a night. There he is again. That guy. Why are these not popping up? Some of them are not popping up. I don't know why. That's very strange. It's got a mind of its own sometimes. Well, that guy Eager says, love Tuesday Night Titans. Thank you, brother. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. The numbers that we've been doing are fucking great. So I think it'll only get better as we go deeper into WrestleMania season. So it should be a lot of fun. Oh, I just tested it, so I know it works. I don't know why the newer ones are not popping up. So you made me test Bree mode. All right, well, anyway, we fell too short of the bonus round of Be the Booker. So we're only going to be doing one tonight. But we are currently bordering on almost 600 likes. So you guys killed it on that. So you're going to get at least one Be the Booker. I don't know how much time is left in that goal. But I know it's late, so let's get to it, shall we? Here is Be the Booker.
Ladies and gentlemen,
oh no, look who it is.
Time to be the Booker.
Look who it is. It's
the Learning Tree. Thanks, guys.
All right, Be the Booker time. I certainly hope, as late as it is, that we can book a respectable card here. All right. Well, who just asked me about Chad Gable? Chad Gable and Otis, the former Raw Tag Team Champions. We got Chad Gable in Be the Booker. If WWE isn't going to book him, then I will. Oh, come on. These guys again. These guys again. We just literally last night in Be the Booker, we landed on Veer and Sangha. This is the second night in a row. Well, I mean, I guess not last night. It would have been Friday night. Keep thinking it's Saturday. Damn it. Man, it takes a lot for me not to bell a Chad Gable match. That's brutal. All right, women's Be the Booker, and take a look at this. Your AEW Women's World Champion, Timeless, Toni Storm, victorious in her Hollywood ending match tonight. How very appropriate. Yeah, Veer came twice. Look at that. He came, he left, and he came again. Toni Storm is going to go one-on-one with Becky Lynch. Now, there's a match I could headline with that match. That could be the main event of the show. That's what I like to see. Okay. This is it. Our final match of the night. The main event. And we begin with Penta. Pentagon Jr. There he is. Penta in the main event. It just feels right. It just feels right, doesn't it? Penta in the main event. Against Big Daddy Cool Diesel. Look how cool Diesel looks here. Come on. You got to give him the belt. Diesel and Penta. I think they could have a good match. With the right opponent, Kevin Nash would go out there and he would be able to have good matches. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker. I think Penta would be one of those people. What a clash of styles, though. Kevin Nash and Penta. Can you imagine Penta giving Kevin Nash a Mexican destroyer? I can't even visualize that in my head. What would that even look like? Would Nash even agree to it? That's the better question. My God. Nash taking a destroyer. Yeah, Penta's going to have to sell his ass off for that match. I hope he can take a good power bomb. Because that's how it's ending. Oh, man. Well, look. Thank you guys for hanging out with me here late on a Sunday night early. Actually, we didn't even start on Sunday. It was Monday morning. It's the thing I hate the most about these AEW shows. It's the reason why I don't review them all live anymore. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You can go check out episode 904 of The Sound Of. Brand new 2-hour plus podcast, covered a lot of different things. So if you missed it, it'll be there for your Monday morning listening. So go check it out. I appreciate you doing so. I'm going to be live with you in less than 24 hours. We got a big Monday Night Raw coming up. Madison Square Garden. CM Punk and Seth Rollins in a steel cage. We just had a steel cage match tonight. I don't think this steel cage match tomorrow night is going to be quite as bloody or violent. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be good, and I'm not looking forward to it. We'll probably have the return of Roman Reigns. And we have a tornado match, right? Ray and Dragon Lee against the New Day. It's going to be a good show. So join me live on YouTube when it's over. And I will be back here with you then. So until then, be well. Stay safe. Have yourselves a great rest of your night. And I will see you in less than 24 hours for yet another podcast. Technically the third one. The third one in 2 days, if you can believe it. I'll see you then. Take care, guys.